Section 4 of Music by Ursula Creighton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 4: Rhythm, Melody, Harmony, and Qualities of Sound. Before we come to consider more closely the manner in which music entered into medieval life and the varied ways it developed, it may be interesting to define a little more exactly some of the qualities of music itself. Certain elements that combine to form music as we understand it can be appreciated by everyone. There is the element of tune or melody. There is also the element of rhythm. And in modern European music, there is what is called harmony, the combining of sounds together. One of the most primitive kinds of music is purely rhythmic, just the beating of a drum by the hand. There is no tune, for the note does not change, but the alternation of quick and slow beats makes a regular rhythm. We can hear such music if we listen to a drum and fife band when the fifes stop playing and the drums continue to beat the rhythm of the march. Primitive people still enjoy such music. They beat drums to celebrate victories, or to call their warriors together to battle or for dances. If you were to watch a Negro in an African village beating his drum and making wonderfully regular sounds, while the rest dance round in a circle, brandishing sticks and lifting their feet in time to the music, you would see how much they enjoy it and how exciting they find it. The rhythmic sounds of a drum by itself do not seem to us like music, for in our music rhythm is combined with melody, and we are accustomed to listening mostly to the melody. But rhythm remains a very important part of our music, and we can plainly hear it if we listen to one of the most simple and obvious forms of rhythm, a march or a waltz. Then, as well as the tune, we hear something quite distinct, the regular beat making the rhythm of the dance. The rhythm of primitive music is simple and obvious, like the rhythms of our dances and marches. But just as melody has developed in interest and expression, so rhythm has become more varied. This is particularly noticeable in songs, for words are written in many rhythms, sometimes regular as in verse, sometimes irregular as in prose. Even folk songs do not all have the simple rhythms of dances. They have the varied rhythms suitable for accompanying words. This intricacy of rhythm is part of their beauty. In modern music, with its long-developed melodies and its wonderful combinations of notes, rhythm is still of the greatest importance, indeed an essential part of music. Music lives when it is performed, and in performance it is the rhythm that makes the vitality and vividness of the music. Players in the present day have attained such command over their instruments that they can play and sing with great facility and great beauty of sound. But important as this is, it loses much of its effect unless they have a living feeling for rhythm. We may hear the same work played by two different performers or conducted by two different conductors. Both the performances may have many beauties, but if one performer has a beautiful feeling for rhythm and the other has not, the difference is amazing. The whole meaning of a piece can change with a change of rhythm, and what might be a stirring melody with the right rhythm becomes sentimental when the rhythm is lacking. For instance, in the last movement of Beethoven's Emperor Concerto, played by a solo piano and orchestra, the piano enters with the beginning of the theme very softly, then pauses, plays again a few notes of the theme, and at last breaks into the complete melody that begins the movement. When a player who has a beautiful sense of rhythm plays this passage, how arresting it is! It is not only the quality of the sound he plays that makes the difference, but the pace at which he plays the notes, the pauses which fill his listeners with a breathless expectancy, and the vivid feeling of life and movement that they experience when the full theme appears. Other players without this rhythmic sense may pause. They may play the notes beautifully and absolutely in time, but they arouse no great sense of expectancy, and the theme, though beautiful, has no sense of pulsating life. Such a sense of rhythm is rare, but it is one of the greatest means of expression. The pace, the pauses, the accents, all the details that it is impossible to describe, these make the rhythm. And it is the rhythm that holds the sounds together and gives the music its meaning. Often, when listening to a concerto, a work for solo instrument with orchestra, we hear the soloist play a theme which arrests and delights us. The same theme played by the orchestra sounds dull and lifeless in comparison. Then perhaps the next time the orchestra plays the theme, the players imitate the soloist, and we experience a sense of new life in the music. Such a feeling is due purely to the rhythmic sense expressed by the soloist. And this sense of rhythm, which is so important, does not only show its importance in any given theme, but throughout a whole work. Some players make us feel that a piece of music is in separate parts, or that parts are rather uninteresting. But a performer with a good sense of rhythm makes us feel as if the whole work were held indissolubly together. The music may indeed have different themes and melodies, with passages of connecting sound, but a performer with rhythm plays each theme with such certainty of rhythmic feeling and the connecting passages at such speed, with such pauses and quickenings as convey his own feeling of carrying on what we have just heard and waiting for what will come next, that the music never seems to break into separate pieces, but sounds vivid and alive from beginning to end. It carries our interest on without flagging. The simplest tune played by an artist with a lovely sense of rhythm has a beauty and feeling all its own. His rhythm makes the music live in a way that is impossible to the commonplace player. In rhythm, therefore, lies much of the vitality of music. But in speaking or thinking of music, the first thing we usually think of is the tune or melody. That is to us the essence of music. Other arts may give rhythm, but no other art gives tunes, though we always hear a rhythm underlying a tune when we think of one. Now we have further become accustomed to music which is made not only of rhythm and melody, but by the combination of several notes played together. This we call harmony. Harmony is a development of music that only occurred in European countries, but we are now so accustomed to its beauties that we scarcely ever imagine a tune without an accompaniment. But in modern music, it is not only that every melody has an accompaniment. Many different kinds of sounds are used together, such as voices and various instruments, violins, trumpets, flutes, etc., and there is interest in understanding something of the different kinds or qualities of sound made by these different instruments. This difference of sound arises from a fact now known to musicians, that when a string vibrates or a column of air in a pipe, not only does the whole string vibrate, but it vibrates in parts as well. The two halves of a string vibrate independently, and so does each third and quarter and so on. Each of these parts sends out a note of its own, which is called a harmonic or partial tone, and the truth is that almost all the musical sounds we hear include some of the many sounds given out by each separate vibrating part or section, as well as of the sound of the whole string. Though the sound made by the whole string is the loudest, the other sounds are there, making part of the sound. There are, however, some instruments which produce simple sounds with no harmonics. The celesta, which makes the clear, bell-like, silvery notes heard sometimes in an orchestra, is one. Boys' voices also make a pure sound, but violins, pianos, and indeed most instruments give notes which are made up of harmonics, and the quality of the sound of any particular instrument depends on which of the harmonics are audible. The first harmonics, the half string, the third of it, and so on, make concordant sounds because the vibrations come so often together. But the notes from the smaller divisions are not so smooth. Note: in order to understand concordant sounds, it must be remembered that a half string or column of air vibrates twice as fast as the whole. Therefore, the vibrations of the half and the whole synchronize at every second vibration. The same mathematical law affects the other divisions of the string or column, and the smaller the division, the less often its vibrations synchronize with those of the whole. End note. They make a harsher effect with the original note given by the whole string. Such harsh harmonics sound very loudly in the quality of the American organ and make the somewhat strident noise for which that instrument is famed. But in the violin, it is the smoother harmonics which are heard. The others are inaudible, and from this comes the instrument's bright, clear tone. The quality, therefore, of the sound of each instrument depends upon which of the harmonics go to form it. In some cases very few sound, in some the concordant ones, and in some the harsher, and in some again certain of the harmonics sound loudly, while in others the same harmonics sound softly. All this affects the tone of the instrument, and it is by this difference that the sound of one instrument is distinguished from another, as that of a flute is distinguished from that of a trumpet. Sounds vary in another way, and that is according to the mechanical method by which they are produced. In instruments made with strings, the strings can either be hit, as in a piano, or played by a bow, as is the violin, or plucked, as happens when the mandolin or banjo is played. And all such sounds from strings are different from the sounds made by columns of moving air, whether in a trumpet, a human voice, an organ, or any other wind instrument. There is one use of harmonics which is very general, and which may often be heard at concerts. When a violinist plays, he sometimes produces very high, sweet, penetrating sounds, quite different from the ordinary bright sounds of his instrument. These sounds are produced by touching the string on which he plays lightly at one of the divisions in which it vibrates, and instead of the sound of the whole string being produced, the sound of one part only rings out clear and sweet. Such sounds are called harmonics, and they make a very definite and distinct effect. When therefore we speak of music, we may only wish to talk of the pleasure or special emotion it has given us, but we shall be able to understand more clearly about the music of different periods when we realize something of the meaning of rhythm, of melody, and of the various qualities of tone that have been made possible by the development of various kinds of musical instruments. End of section 4 of Music by Ursula Creighton, read by Martha Weller, Champaign, Illinois, February 20th, 2024.